Joining me now, Republican Senator James Lankford, who is on the Homeland Security Committee. And Senator, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much. So have you spoken to Senator Romney at all about his thoughts on witnesses?
No, I haven't recently spoken to him, but everybody has their own perspective. They're trying to be able to work through the process and what information they need. All of us are flowing the arguments, taking notes, trying to be able to determine what questions they have, what questions are being answered, what's not answered.
So when Mitt Romney says, I think it's very likely I'll be in favor of witnesses, do you share that sentiment at all?
I think it's a great idea to ask Mitt Romney where he's coming from on that one. Right now, I'm looking at trying to be able to evaluate what's in front of me. There is a question that some people have to say that this should go on for a while. We should open this investigation up and take on things the House did not take. I think the first thing we have to answer is what the House sent us. The House did their investigation, about 78 days total. They gathered their information, their evidence, their witnesses. They're sending them to us. They could have gone a much longer. In fact, it's the shortest impeachment in history from the House. So they could have gone much longer, gathered a lot more information, and sent us over. They're still welcome to be able to do that if they choose to be able to do that. But we got to respond to what is in front of us right now, not say, well, we don't see anything here, but let's go look for more. That's not really the Senate role. That's the House role.
So some of the things we have heard, of course, that have come to you from the House, right? Testimony
Sure.
that we all, the American people, saw. When it comes down to what the president did and who he asked to do what, include Mr. Holmes and Mr. Hale. Let me play those for you.
I then heard President Trump ask, so he's going to do the investigation.
The president had so directed through the chief of staff, acting chief of staff.
He's referring there, of course, to the hold on aid. Do you want to hear from the chief of staff so you know once and for all what the president of the United States asked Mick Mulvaney to do or not do when it came to withholding aid and why?
I don't need to hear every conversation the president has with his chief of staff, just like the president can't walk into my office and ask for every conversation I have with my chief of staff. We have two separate branches. That's been an issue that's been argued for a very long time. There are some conversations the president has with his chief of staff that are perfectly fine to be able to go through an impeachment process and be able to ask. There are others that are not. What the House is asking us to do is not allow the president to be able to go to court, skip that whole process, and for the first time ever say to the executive branch, you don't have the right to go to court, what has been true of every other branch. I do not agree with that. And the House said we're going to skip the courts early on. If anyone challenged it and said they were going to want to go to court, they said no, just drop it. Then they're encouraging us as the Senate to say press through.
You're talking about subpoenas. Of course, legal
Sure.
experts say it would be very easy for you to get subpoenas and have them honored. There would be no delay, and you could hear what these people have to say. You'd be able to cross-examine them and do everything that you would be able to do in a court.
Yep, you bet. That's exactly what legal experts say. There's also a whole other same group of legal experts that say this will go out and take about 2 months to be able to go through court, the same process the House of Representatives should go through. The politics of this is different than the facts of this. The first thing we got to deal with is the facts that the House is actually standing in front of us. Let's answer those questions. The politics of what the House did is go as fast as they could through an impeachment process, send it to the Senate, and then say, now we want you to go as slow as possible. We want you to be able to drag this out through the election time. We did something quickly. We sent it to you. Now you go very, very slowly. That's why they drug it out for a month before they actually sent it over. That's why they're wanting to demand witnesses, extra testimony, extra evidence. And they're saying either go to court and resolve it or just take away executive privilege from this president and every president in the future forever. I don't think that's something you just flippantly decide.
I want to play for you, Senator, one of the key arguments from the president's lawyers today. They had several, right? They were trying to say that the president was worried about corruption, and we were just talking about that a little bit on the program. Another one was that there was no pressure. And here's the argument that was made today.
They tell you that the Ukrainians must have felt pressure, regardless of what they've said. President Zelensky said he felt no pressure. The House managers tell you they know better.
Here, though, Senator, is what the House managers showed in their presentation on that very specific issue.
Here is Ambassador Yovanovitch's testimony explaining just how important the United States is to Ukraine.
The U.S. Relationship for Ukraine is the single most important relationship. And so I think that President Zelensky, any president, would do what they could to lean in on a favor request.
As you and I both know, Senator, the United States provides an incredible amount of aid to Ukraine, especially on the military front, right? The estimate is 90% of the foreign military aid, that goes to Ukraine, comes from the United States. Don't the numbers show that the Ukrainian president would care a whole heck of a lot what the president of the United States wanted him to do?
Sure, it would. But again, you're assuming a lot of things that the White House counsel actually blew out of the water today on the facts on that. The first thing that he started with is the House managers began with the assumption that not only did President Trump lie, but President Zelensky is also lying as well. So neither of them are telling the truth. Both of them are involved in this conspiracy.
Why would President Zelensky come out and say, you know what, I felt pressured. I'm a weak loser of a guy. I felt pressured. You really think he would come out and say that?
Sure. Well, again, you're back to the same thing the House managers are. Don't take what he said. Take what he actually meant.
No, I'm taking
read
the
his
facts.
mind to
If
be
you
able to
get
go through the process.
90% of your income comes from a person, you're going to come out and tell the world, you're going to just come out and say, you know, hey, no big deal? No. I mean, the numbers show that he relies.
Well, actually, the defense number is actually 10%. 90% comes from other sources. 10% of his military budget is from the United States. So it's actually just the opposite of that. But the challenge that you have is now you're into the point of trying to be able to read someone's mind. So you've got to be able to look at the facts around it. The facts around it are that.
Just to be clear, my understanding is 90% of Ukraine's foreign military aid comes from the United States of America. That is the statistic I quoted.
Okay, so yeah, there was the 10% number that I was quoting is actually of their total military budget. You may be very well right on that. That was part of President Trump's frustration when he said the European Union should be more engaged and to be able to help. It's the first part of that July the 25th call. That again, the House managers said the president wasn't concerned about the aid from other countries when that actually was the first thing in the call. That got pointed out today as well. What the White House did today is finish the rest of the story. If you go back to an old Paul Harvey comment from years ago. The House managers brought up a lot of different comments, but didn't read the sentence around it. For instance, this whole thing, Zelensky was really trying to get a White House meeting, except in the phone call transcript itself, President Zelensky said, well, if we can't meet in the White House, why don't we meet in Poland September the 1st? And the president said, sure, let's do that. And they set that meeting up to be able to do that. So it wasn't about a White House meeting that's hanging over him.
Well,
and
of course, that meeting did not happen. And a White House meeting,
that
as
meeting
you and
actually
I
happened
both
with the
know,
vice
is
president.
a very, very different thing in terms of its power and prestige than a meeting on,
Sure.
on the side of some meeting
Sure
overseas.
It is. Absolutely sure it is. But Zelensky is the one who raised the question about let's meet in Poland. And the reason the Poland meeting didn't happen is because we had a hurricane coming through. So the vice president of the United States was sent, and then they set up the next available time for the next bilateral meeting, September the 25th. So it wasn't they were blocking a meeting the whole time. That meeting was already in process of being set up months before in that process, and you had to be able to work out the security and the details and everything else. So that was already in process. As far as the aid actually coming to them, it was pretty clear today that the Ukrainians didn't know about the aid not coming into them until the end of August. What, again, the House managers have left out is, if you go back to 2018, the aid was not delivered until the 28th of September. This year, it was the 30th of September. If you go back the year before that, it was also a similar time period. So this is not atypical, but again, they're stating one fact and leaving out the rest.
We also know of emails and calls that were the very afternoon of that phone call from Ukrainians to people at the State Department saying, what's up with the aid? Where is the aid? Another former foreign defense official in the Ukrainian government said that she knew in July. So there are questions on those when they knew, right? So I guess the bottom line question to you, Senator, is why not have more witnesses so you know? So it isn't me giving you facts that are facts and you giving a fact of what someone else said. Let's get more witnesses. What's the problem with that?
So the interesting thing about that is we're asking that same question of the House. Why they rushed this process, why they didn't do their background, why they didn't do their work. All this could be done in the House. Instead, they didn't want to do this.
But now the buck
they
stops
wanted to
with
land
you.
us in the
But
Senate.
now the buck stops with you.
It does. It absolutely does, and we have to answer the question the House sent us. The House is not sending us saying, do a Mueller investigation, do 2 years worth of work here to be able to cram all this in. That's not what this is. This is an impeachment process. It's a constitutional issue and has constitutional long-term ramifications, whether it's Clinton, whether it's Johnson, whether it's Trump. This is a whole different issue. You're asking for it to be a special counsel report, just open it up, look everything all the time, spend the rest of the year investigating that. That's not what I think an impeachment is supposed to be.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Senator.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You bet.